Well, good. We'll get things started. Again, my name is John Motz. I'm the professor of this particular class, and I teach a couple of different classes here for FPU. Usually, or at least over the last, I'm going to say 7 or maybe 8 years now, I've been teaching for FPU primarily at the Merced campus. Are all of you Merced area folk? Okay, good. But that's just been a recent little wrinkle for me. Teaching the courses on Bible that I get a chance to teach. I do teach what's called the basic course or the beginning course, the BIB438, which is, I think most of you have had it, the study on the Gospel of Matthew. And then this course, which is more of an overview of the entire Bible, which on the one hand is a little bit easier because we don't dig nearly as deeply into it as you did with Matthew, but because it's so much more material, it's a little bit, it's a far wider ranging overview. And so it's a little bit more intimidating at the same time. But I've been teaching the Bible for a long time. I have been, prior to the teaching at FPU and along with teaching at FPU, I'm also a local church pastor. I pastor a church in Atwater, and I've been in Atwater since, I've been in Atwater since 1991. Now, some of you are saying, gosh, I wasn't even born then. And that's probably true. I'm old and you're not, and that's good. But I've been here serving this church. I did work out in La Grande, another part of the county, for a short bit before moving here. But just in these last few years, I've been doing the local church thing, as well as teaching here for FPU and finding it to be a lot of fun. And I think really engaging, because one thing it does is it allows me to stay aware of what it means. Sometimes when you've been doing this for a while, sometimes you don't ask the right questions any longer. You just get to think you know all the answers. And part of the beauty of working with students who don't have a lot of familiarity with the Bible, I'm not saying you don't, but reading some of the introductory papers before tonight, I saw that a lot of you were confessing that you don't have a great Bible knowledge, and that's good. Actually, let me tell you, I'm glad for that, because that makes my job a lot more fun as we get ready to launch in, because it means that we've got a lot more opportunity for those aha moments, or opportunities to say, oh, that's okay, I get it now. And that's really a fun thing for me as a professor, not just to be a conveyor of information, but to see how sometimes that information kind of catches us by surprise, and how it can affect us in a lot of different ways. So it's this course is designed to teach the Bible, at the same time doing it in a way that helps us integrate a little bit of that Bible awareness with the role of being an educator. And so part of my introduction is that at one point I was kind of sitting in your spot. I started out my career not as a pastor, but as a local school, elementary school teacher. And that's where I got my initial degree and my initial credential before I packed up and went along with my wife back east to a seminary to be trained to do local church work, which is also then the foundation for my ability to teach this course. But we've been living here, again, as I said, in Atwater since 1991. We started a church called New Life Community Church here in Atwater in the year 2000, and I've been pastoring that church for the last 20 years. As I mentioned, I have a wife, my wife Lori, who does work over at Atwater High School, who is correcting me about what's going on over there tonight. And I also have 2 grown sons. My oldest Andy is 30 and my youngest Daniel is 26. And they both have moved out of the house, although Daniel, my youngest, still lives in the area. He lives up in Turlock, so we do see him quite often. He works here in Atwater now. So that's kind of that's my family. And kind of how we're doing and what we're doing. So before we get going any further, just with my introduction, I'd like to just say I'd love to hear a little bit from you. And I got some of your papers, and I did get a chance to look at them today beforehand. And I wanted to ask a two-part question. First part is just going to give me a little information. If you happen to have a little bit of, if you live in the area, you know, where do you live? Maybe where are you currently working? If you have family, what kind of a configuration is your family in right now? And then my second question, which I'll come back around, I want to talk about those 5 phrases or 5 words. Do a little bit of, when you think of the Bible, what are some things that pop into mind? A little free association. I'd like to do just a little experiment with you guys on associating some of our thoughts about the Bible as we get ready to jump into the class. So anyone can start, but all of us are going to do a little bit of introduction. So tell me a little bit about yourself, please.
Okay, I'll start.
Good, thank you, Jason.
My name's Jason. So everybody in this class, we all know each other, so that makes it easier. The only one we're introducing ourselves to is you. Anyway, a little bit about me.
Perhaps, Jason, I should have you introduce Jessica, and maybe Jessica could introduce Cicely, and we go around that way. That might be more interesting.
Oh dear. Okay.
Yeah. No. Please tell me about yourself. But you're right. If you all know each other, you might be all more engaged.
We don't know each other that well yet.
Yeah. That might be a little bit more challenging.
Oh, we've been in these classes together, so we know each other's faces.
Fair enough.
Good. We've been going through it all together. I work at Merced College. I'm an instructional support technician. It's basically a fancy title for teacher's aide. So after working there for 7 years, I decided to pursue my own credential. I just have a son in January. I don't know if this can, oh, there he is. There
hey, there he is.
Him.
Nice.
He's 4 months old now. And yeah, let's see.
Wow. Congratulations.
I'm set to finish the program. Thank you. Set to finish this program in December if all goes well.
Okay.
And yeah, and I'm looking forward to what's next.
Fantastic. Well, congratulations. Graduation's not just around the corner then.
It seems that way, yeah.
Yeah.
You wanted some information about what I put in the paper? Is that what you were
asking? No. I'll come back around. But okay. You did exactly. That's okay. Now the rest of you, Jason has done a fabulous job of role modeling the kind of response I'm looking for. So yeah, just some things interesting, like what you're up to, and yeah, what's going on, how's your family, and all the rest.
I'll go next.
Okay.
I'm sorry, Cicely.
Go ahead, Jessica. I'll go after you.
Okay, thank you. So I'm Jessica. I currently live in Winton.
Oh, well, hey, there we go.
Yeah.
Just up the road. I can almost see Winton from here, so.
Yeah, pretty much grew up in this area. Well, I grew up in the country in Winton off of Schaefer going towards Snelling. Mm-hmm. Moved to Atwater for a little in Merced, but now I'm back here. I have a son. He's 12 years old, and I am currently working at the sheriff's office in Merced as a clerk, but I decided that that's not for me no more. I've always loved kids, so I was like, I'm 34 gonna be this year, but I was like, it's never too late to go back to school and pursue what you really feel like you need to do or want to do with your life. So here I am. I hope that I can finish my education and the credential and become an elementary school teacher. So that's a little bit about me and what I'm doing here in this class tonight.
Wow, you guys are excellent students so far. You're doing a great job. Thank you. Jason was fantastic. So were you, Jessica.
Thank you.
So got a question for you though.
Yes.
Okay, so you would like to be an elementary school teacher. Are you on track to graduate as soon as Jason is? Is that the whole cohort kind of in that same track?
I would have been. However, I guess I have 2 general ed classes that I need to take, and I don't want to double up because my plate's like way too full.
Yeah,
and so if I double up, I'm like, I feel like I won't be able to commit fully to one class and give my all to it because I really stress about getting good grades. So I'd rather just take my time and get it all done right. And so I'll be done in the spring, unfortunately, because I have to take those 2 general ed classes. or else I would have been done in the fall as well.
Okay, well, fair enough. And when you do finish, is there a certain age group that you would prefer to work with? I know elementary school is a pretty wide range of where the kids can be.
Well, right now I'm hoping maybe between 1st and 3rd grade, but who knows, might not end up liking it and want to teach the older kids, but I really like the younger kids, and I think they still love their teachers and love learning. The older kids are kind of more rowdy. I don't know if I can handle them right now. I'm, you know, trying to learn to handle my 12-year-old some days. So
Yeah, that can be a challenge.
So that's it.
Well, good. Well, just knock out good grades, and then in a year or so, you can, you know, write me and say, hey, John, you remember when I was in your class? And I'll say, oh, yes, you were my teacher's pet. You were awesome. You were all aces. And if you need a reference letter, I know all the superintendents around here. I know Randy out at Winton. I know, yeah, I know Sandy down at Atwater Elementary. So yeah, if you're looking around here, you want to be local.
Yeah, I'll be local. I don't
I'm
really
your guy.
plan on.
Okay.
Thank
so
you
just,
so much.
Yeah. So
I don't plan on moving out of here.
So that does raise the bar up for you. You've got to do really good to impress me so I can write that good letter. But
oh man, pressure's on.
I'd be happy to do that for you, Jess. Okay.
Thank you so much.
You're so welcome. Nice to meet you. Thank you.
Nice to meet you too.
Is it Cicely? Are you next?
Yes, I'll go next. So yeah, my name is Cicely, and I actually was, my ears perked up when you said you used to work in LeGrand, because I grew up in LeGrand. And, yeah, I went all through elementary and high school there, and actually worked at the elementary school and taught preschool for about 6 years there.
Did you really? Wow, good for you.
Yes, I'm currently managing a boutique here in Merced. It's called Christina's Boutique in the Bear Creek Galleria.
Okay.
But yeah, I decided to go back to school to finish my credentials, or my bachelor's and my credentials, so that yeah, I can go back to teaching. I miss working with children.
Well, good. So you work with
adults. It feels like I'm working with children, but
yeah.
actual children. So I'm ready to be back in the classroom. Yeah.
Yeah, you don't hold it against the kids when they act like kids. It's kind of sometimes hard to tolerate the adults when they're, yeah.
Exactly.
LeGrand. Okay, let me ask, when were you born, and or roughly how old are you?
I'm 33. I was born in 87.
Okay. Well, you wouldn't remember me. I was there for a short time between 88 and 91. So you were probably pretty small.
Which church were you at?
At the Methodist Church there on Washington, and yeah.
Yes, that's my church.
Is it really? Yeah.
Yes, that's
how awesome.
My parents and my mom raised me in that church. Yeah.
Oh, it's fantastic. Wow. Yeah, that was the church, the first church that I got the opportunity to serve, that we came and served there. And then we moved to Atwater after that. But yeah, LeGrand holds a very dear place in my heart. So yeah, that's fantastic. Oh, excellent. Well, I'll look forward to doing some catching up with you then. So, you know, we can say that we're old friends.
Awesome. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, who's next?
I'll go next.
Okay, Joan.
My name is Chona, and I am currently living here in Las Vegas. And my husband and I moved here since 2009. And I have 3 wonderful boys, children. One is 13 years old, 10, and 4 years old. And yeah, I am hoping to graduate this fall to get my bachelor's degree of studies. Yeah, just working as assistant aide here in Merced area. I'm kind of looking forward to start with a special education when I graduate. So it's a bit challenging, but I have all the knowledge, and I enjoyed really working with kids with special ed.
Now, are you with special ed kids now, Chona?
Yes.
Or is that what you're? Okay, you are as an aide there in Merced.
Here in Las Vegas, yes.
In Las Vegas. Okay. Okay. Well, fantastic. That's great. That's what the world needs more is good special ed teachers. That's a big deal. So
yeah, it's not easy, but I'm I enjoy working with them, and I am learning a lot because I have my son. He has an autism, and I can really relate to it and apply all the knowledge and apply it to my son. So it's benefiting me and everybody else.
Which one? You have three sons, so which one? The oldest, youngest, or middle one is the one with the
young-
autism scale?
The youngest one. He's
Okay.
7 years old, so he's doing great, so that's a good thing.
Got a little boy in our church family. He's about 4 years old, and gosh, we have a number of kids in our church is not very large, but for some reason, God has put families here together who a number of them are raising kids who are on the autistic scale somewhere. And actually, we've got two. Well, one 4-year-old, and I think then a 6 and a 7-year-old, and then we have a young teenager. So it's really an interesting thing. It's been kind of eye opener for me too, because that's not been the case always. And and there are extra challenges and extra blessings that come along with that. So yeah, awesome. Well, thank you, Jonah.
Thank you so much.
Aaron, last but not least, or something like that.
Save the best for last.
Yes, that's it. That's what I meant to say.
I'm just kidding. Well, yes, my name is Erin. I actually live in Merced, but I work at Los Ganas High School, special education as well. I'm a vocational trainer. I've been there for about 8 years, but I've been in the field for about 10. So that is my motivation to become a teacher. More or less mild to moderate than moderate to severe, because right now I'm more on the severe end, but I want to be like a SDC transition teacher. That's my goal. But I live in Merced. I'm married. I don't have any kids yet, but I have lots of animals. They're pretty much my kids.
Okay, so what kind of animals do you have?
Oh my gosh, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 dogs. 2 cats.
Wow.
I live on a ranch, so
Okay.
we have a lot of animals. No farm animals yet. Once I'm done with school, I'm gonna get cows, chickens, pigs. That way I'll have time for them. Right now I don't have time for them, so I'm waiting to finish school and then I'll have my full farm.
Okay, so after you graduate, we'll have to have a party at Aaron's house and come out and instead of having a housewarming, instead of having a housewarming gift, we'll bring some small farm animal.
Oh yes, I would love that.
That'd be good. A chicken or something. I don't know. Maybe a pig would be too big, but yeah, we'll bring some farm animals out your way.
That sounds good.
I could bring the eggs. I don't know about a chicken, but I'll bring some eggs.
There you go.
Now, Cicely, do you still live in La Grande, or are you now in Merced?
No, I live in Merced now, but pretty much it's only been really recent. I pretty much have lived in La Grande my entire life, except for the past 2 years.
Okay. And okay, last question. This is, and I'll get off my old home week here. Cicely, your parents, you said they were in La Grande with you when you were, like between 1 and 4, which is good. That's where parents should be. It's with their kids when they're between 1 and 4. What's their names?
My mom's name is Esther Childers. I don't know if you remember
Childers.
her.
Huh. It's not ringing a bell. Yeah.
She's like a petite little Mexican woman. She's really short and tiny.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Well, good. Does she still live out there?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. Good. Yeah, I've again, connections are, you have friends who live out there still and what have you. So that's really cool. Okay. Well, then thank you for that introduction. And then, so the second part, and again, this is where I wanted to kind of jump off. When we talk about the Bible, I realize that none of you are Bible students, and sometimes because the Bible's not in our normal wheelhouse, as far as, what we do with our academic stuff, that sometimes thinking about doing a class on the Bible can be intimidating. So if you could just walk around again, just kind of walk around the group again with that. Just what are some words that, just free association, when you think of the Bible, and let's be honest, we can be honest, we can be fair here. Whatever word kind of comes to mind, let's put it out there. I'd like to just get a half a dozen or dozen or two just words that pop in your head when you think of the Bible.
Promises.
I'm sorry, say it again.
Promises.
Promises, very good. Okay.
For me, birth and resurrection.
Okay,
Salvation.
very good.
Okay, salvation and sacrifice.
I would say love.
Good.
I was going to say sacrifices, but Cicely got it. So
That's okay. That's okay. You can say the same one over again. That's okay.
Hope.
Hope.
Faith.
Okay, good.
Prophet.
Okay,
Jesus Christ.
yeah, good.
Proverbs.
Proverbs, okay. Okay, maybe one time around for each of you, one more time around, and we'll call it. Just see what comes out here.
Parables.
Parables, okay. And that was part of the other class, wasn't it? That was a big part of the other class. Yeah, good.
Can I say more than one word?
You can, please do, Jason.
Okay. What I was going to say is kind of ties in with my birth and resurrection. Picking that is because of the apostles, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John tells the same story, 4 different times, kind of that whole thing. So that's why that sticks with me the most, probably because I've read those more than any other part.
Okay, good. So Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, the Gospels, good. Good, okay. We got all the way around again, or are we good? Good. Okay, well, yeah, as I look at the list, and I would love to just take time to say, okay, when you think of those words, what is it that the Bible brings up in us that causes those thoughts to come to mind? But I'll just work off this. These are all really good and really positive responses, and so I'm really glad. That helps me know that for the most part, even if you may feel a little bit intimidated by a class that's going to be on the Bible, that you've got positive feelings towards the Bible, and which is good, because sometimes people come in and they have to take the class because it's required, but they don't really want to know anything about the Bible because they don't have a good impression of what the Bible is. And so because of that, they come with a real negative attitude, and it becomes difficult. But that's okay, because that's wherever it is we start is where we start. But I'm really glad to see this and hear these words, and it says, okay, this is going to be a fun class because you guys are coming at this with an open mind and an excited kind of a willingness to learn about this, which is not maybe up your alley, maybe it's not your forte, but there's a lot of good here that I can see in your responses. It says that you're expecting good things to come from our study, and we'll have some of this, we will get there. So one of the phrases, and I'm not sure, I didn't catch who it was who said it, but it said Jesus Christ. Clearly, okay, thank you, Jessica. Clearly, the person of Jesus plays a big role in the Bible story, but we will focus on a lot in this class. While that is the case, and in fact, he is clearly, from a perspective, if you were trying to boil it all down, he would be the most significant person in the Bible. But a large part of the Bible, and a large part of what this class will try to do, is give you an overview or an introduction to the whole of the Bible. And so we'll actually spend more of our time looking at the Bible, other parts that don't necessarily deal directly with Jesus. A lot of our time is going to be spent in the Old Testament, which is, I think you all know this, the two main parts, the one main division in the Bible is in the two parts, the Old Testament and the New Testament. The Old Testament being clearly older, that's why it's called the Old Testament, but it's also larger And because it's not specifically or directly about Jesus, it's also the part of the Bible that is seems most distant to us, and it's most unfamiliar to us. And so we'll spend a good bit, probably the first month here of the class, working through Old Testament themes, Old Testament styles of writing, genres that we like to call them, the different types of literary material that the Bible is contained with, and we'll move forward and get into the New Testament and look at the types of literary material that are unique to the New Testament. And we'll see the Bible that way, because what we hope to do is give you enough familiarity that, one, the Bible doesn't feel intimidating to you, and two, that as you come back to read the Bible for yourself, you'll have enough of an understanding of what it means and what is there and how to interpret the different types of literary materials, so that it doesn't become quite so confusing or off-putting as it can be at times. I know I read in your papers today that a number of you have attempted to read through the Bible all the way from start to finish. I'll be honest with you, that almost always ends in failure. I'm not talking about you, I'm talking about everybody, okay? That's a tough task. And, but I'm not saying that to dissuade you from trying to do it again, but I think, quite honestly, I think after you've had this course, and if you were to venture in to try to do that again, I think you would find more success, because at least now you would have a little bit more of a roadmap as to what you'll be doing and what you'll be seeing as you move through all that material. Some of it kind of heavy, some of it kind of difficult, some of it really we wonder what's it even here for. But as we begin to see it in the different types of material that are there, it'll be a little bit easier for us to get a handle on it. And so, so yeah, I think it's a good place for us to begin right here. Now, real quick, just show of hands. Have you had the previous Bible class here at FPU, the 314? Okay, we're about half and half. Okay. Jason and Cicely, I'm just confirming, you guys have not had 314 yet?
No, this is my first one.
Very good. Okay. Well, see, that's good for me to know, because one of the things we generally do in the other Bible class that focuses on Jesus and the Gospel of Matthew. See, Jason, I thought you had this other class because you were talking about the Gospels in Matthew, Mark, and Luke, and John, and I was thinking, man, okay, he's talking like he's had 314.
No,
yeah.
I'm registered for it, though. It's after this one.
Yeah, it is. It's coming. Yeah, and for whatever reason, FPU has designed it this way. They've designed it this way to generally have the introduction to Jesus in the Gospel of Matthew as their introduction to Bible. And then they do the overview of the entire Bible second. But it would also make sense to say, let's look at the overview of the Bible before we look specifically at that one specific area. And so it's an easy enough transition. So for those of you who have had the other Bible class, you've heard phrases like the three worlds model of interpretation, whereas Cicely has never heard that, and she's going to say, I don't know what that model of interpretation is. And that's okay, Cicely. We'll talk about that. It's a pattern that we teach here at FPU that enables us to take any part of the Bible and begin and really basically ask three questions of it, or look at it from three different perspectives. And so we'll talk about that a little bit more tonight, because I do want to get that kind of at least that understanding under our belt. This is what we'll be doing, and this will be the pattern that we will use as we move forward. But we'll again, being that some of you have not had 314, we'll take a little time to kind of work through that a little bit. But otherwise, tonight, I want to just do a real brief introduction. So we do have books, and I'm not sure where we're at with the arrival of books, but let me just walk them through real quick with you. If you've had 314, you have the books that we use in this class. We start with this one, okay? This is one that we work with. It is the New Oxford Annotated Bible. And we use this for two reasons at least. There's probably a dozen, but I'll just list two. One, that way we're all in the same place. When we're reading, say we're reading a text together in class or on Zoom, then we're all in the same version. You may know that some Bibles read a little bit differently because they use different versions, and we'll read about that this week, a little bit about why there are different versions and how they're different. But we use this one, it's in what's called the New Revised Standard Version, and this is the required text for both this class as well as 314. So if you already had this, you've already got this book. The second reason why we use this is because it has a lot of other helps in it. That's not just the Bible, but there's a lot of notes, introductions to various books, a little information about the author or the historical context out of which these letters or this narrative or these poems come. And that helps us in our understanding how we better apply it to our lives. And so we start with that one. If you had 314, then you also have, I believe you should have this one. It's called How to Read the Bible for All It's Worth by Gordon Fee and Douglas Stewart. And Fee and Stewart is an amazing book. I am so glad. I'm told that next year they're going to transition, and this book is falling out of the book list, and they're getting a new book. And I'm really bummed about that because this is one of the best books I've ever found that help give a handle on what it is that you're going to be looking at and reading. So Fee and Stewart, we'll come back to that. Also, there's a book called The Upside Down Kingdom by Don Craybill. This one is the main book, really, for those in 314, but for us, this is kind of more of a secondary book. It really gets very little usage. So if, for example, you didn't have it yet, don't stress about it. It is probably of the 5 books, it is the least important for this particular course. And then for this course, because we're dealing with educators, we have 2 other books that are only for the educator one, God's Healing Strategy by Ted Grimsroot, and then Bonnie McLemore's Let the Children Come. And again, these are unique to the 438 classes. And so these are actually really, really good books. People oftentimes say that at the end of the class, they say, oh, this one was my favorite, or they'll say, oh yeah, this one was my favorite. This one is either going to be your favorite or your least favorite. There's no in between with this one. I'll just warn you, you're going to just say, this is the best thing ever, or you're going to say, gosh, I hated that class because I had to read that darn book. We'll let you find out though. Tell me in 6 weeks. Because some people just, again, you love it or hate it, and it's, but it's a good book that kind of takes a little different route. It gives us a little more of a psychological perspective, and which is helpful for us, especially as we're gearing up to understand children and developmental process and things like that, and how some of what we're talking about, either be in Bible study or Christian education, for example, how some of that factors in. So, but good stuff as we get started. Let me turn real quick to this idea of the 3 worlds model. And, you know, I have some slides, but I didn't get them prepared tonight. So just, I'll try to work through this as best I can. Basically, when we talk about the 3 worlds model, and again, some of you have had this class already, so this is going to be review. Whenever you look at a text, a section of the Bible that you want to better understand or better interpret to make sure you're understanding what the message is for you today, how do we begin to apply it? We start with the historical context. And so that becomes what we would call in the 3 worlds model, the historical world. You look at the text and you try to understand what's going on historically, what was the happening historically at the time, how does that affect us? You know, are they using terms that we don't use any longer? Were they talking about things that we don't readily understand today because we live 2,000 or 3,000 years after it was written? And so you do a little bit of the work of understanding what the text meant in its original historical framework. That can be difficult, but again, some of that work can be done with the help of some of the aids in the New Oxford Annotated Bible. And that's why the helps are there, to give us a better understanding of how it came to be and why it's there. The second world would be, in the second step for us as interpreters, would be to, we call that the literary world, not the literal world, but the literary world, because then we're looking at specifically, once we have an understanding of where it comes from in the historical context and what historical context, how it applies here, then we look and we ask the question, what's going on here? What kind of a world is being painted in this text? What kind of, what is this story trying to work me through? What is this teaching, or what is this poem, or what is this statute? What are they all about, and what's going on here from a literary point of view? Is this a parable? Someone mentioned parable. Because you might understand a parable different, you might approach a parable different than you would if you were reading the story about a narrative of something that actually happened. Is this a prophetic teaching about something that's going to happen in the future? Is it an example of how things work in the past? There's a lot of things that we can begin to break it down and say, okay, what is actually in this text itself? And then the third world, what we refer to as the third lens or third world, is what we call the contemporary world, which is, what does it mean to me? So if we understand it in its original historical context, if we begin to understand what is going on or what is trying to be communicated in the literary, what is actually there in the black and white, and then we say, how does it then begin to apply to me? But if we just jump right into what does it say and how does that apply to me, we might miss out on a lot of the context, a lot of the original meaning, and so we would lose, we might even get the wrong understanding of what's going on in that text. So, so for example, let me do this. You may be familiar with a story. It was a story that Jesus taught in Luke 15, I believe. And it's the story of, we'll do the prodigal son. Okay, the prodigal son. That's not Luke 15, it's Luke 13. In the story of the prodigal son, Jesus told a story about a man who went from Jerusalem on his way to Jericho. And along the way, he fell into the hands of robbers and was attacked and beaten and had all of his stuff taken, and he was left on the road for dead. Now, we know that story, and we know how the story kind of goes, that there's different people that come by. There was a Levite and a priest, and then a Samaritan who rolled by. And so Jesus is telling the story to people in his day, but we're reading it in our day. And so oftentimes, if we don't do the historical world, we'll miss out on so much of the nuance of what Jesus was trying to point out or trying to communicate. And so with a story like the prodigal son, it's really important that we go back and understand the historical context. Who are these other people? What was the road to Jerusalem like? Why would a person have traveled along that road to Jericho, excuse me? Why would he have been traveling along that way? Who are these other people? When Jesus mentions these three and he identifies them, just because we don't know who they are doesn't mean that their identity wasn't important to the story. And as you do the historical work, you find that's very important to the story, because the third person who came by was the Samaritan, and you and I don't know who Samaritans are, so we don't really care. But in Jesus' day, that was a really a radical, almost a revolutionary twist to the story that no one who was listening to Jesus would have ever anticipated. It would be like in a modern day story, someone saying that the first person who walked by was Mother Teresa, but she didn't do anything. And the second person who walked by was Billy Graham, but he wouldn't do anything. And everyone who was listening to this story of this teacher is saying, well, if those people won't stop by, what in the world is going to happen to this poor man on the road? And then Jesus said the Samaritan came by, which to us in our modern day would be like someone saying, oh, Osama bin Laden came by, and he was the one who reached out and helped and tended to the wounds of that man. And And as you can imagine, in Jesus' day, people were in an uproar. They were saying, wait a minute, he can't be the hero of the story, he's the villain. And but Jesus was very keen on that kind of thing. And again, if we don't read with the historical mind, we miss all of that, and we don't understand how Jesus is really turning the tables, really upending the scales. And we settle for part of the story which we can understand, that we should care for those who have had tragedy befall them. That becomes a clear part, and that translates pretty well no matter the history of it. But we miss out on all of the really radical challenge to not see skin color, or to not allow culture to divide us or make us think someone is better than another based on their social status or their ethnicity. And because we don't get that, we go to our fallback position is just to say, well, be nice to people, and that's good. But it's not nearly as charged. It's not nearly as dramatic. It's not nearly as, I think, relevant for us as we read through the Bible to see how really utterly relevant to the challenges we face today that the message of the Bible can be for us. Because sometimes we think the Bible is just an ancient document, ancient stories about people who lived a long time ago and has nothing to do with us. And I think when we do that, we fail to give the Bible its due and what it can be for us. So that becomes kind of our starting place. And as you read this week in the Fee and Stewart book, if you're in chapter 1, and that will be one of our, that'll be our starting point in Fee and Stewart. And on page 27, I'll just identify 27 to about page 32, to about 33. In Fee and Stewart, it walks through this three-world model. So if you've read chapter 1 in Fee and Stewart, I'd invite you to read those pages 27 to 33 over again. And in doing so, look at what he refers to. He doesn't use the term three worlds model, but as I explained that three worlds model, Fee and Stewart talk about it in a similar way. They talk about that first task on page 27, and they use a big word. You and I would call that the historical world. He refers to it as exegesis. That's just a term. That's just part of the vocabulary for the class. That it's how Fee and Stewart describe the word exegesis, what it means. It means doing really those first two steps. And as you read these next couple of pages, you'll see that's exactly what he's talking about: the historical context, the literary content, and that becomes Fee and Stewart's explanation of our three worlds. And then on page 33, it talks about the second task, which for us is really our third world. And he uses the term not contemporary world, he uses the term hermeneutics. And again, funny word, kind of fun to say. You know, if you really want to impress your friends, if they say, oh, you're taking a Bible class, why would you do that? You say, because I'm really honing up on my hermeneutics. They'll say, what? Wow, you're so smart. They won't know what you're talking about, and that's okay. But you can impress your friends with all your cool Bible terminology by dropping words like that. Now, these words aren't actually in the Bible, but they become kind of the coin of the realm, the words that we use in trying to understand how the Bible can apply to us today. So again, the three worlds model, Fee and Stewart talks about it in really two larger steps, but he talks about all the same things: historical context, literary content, and then hermeneutics, which is putting it into the here and now for us, so we can better understand what this thing is that we hold in our hands called the Bible. Okay, so chapter 1 is really a key chapter for this book, and again for us as we move forward. Okay, we're at almost 7 o'clock. Okay, well, we have time. I'd like to begin and do, yeah. In your Moodle, number 1.3 this week, and I'm not sure if you've had a chance to get out that far. But on 1.2 is going to ask you to watch a couple of videos about the book of Genesis, which is the first book in the Bible. It's the first book of the Old Testament, or because the Old Testament is first, it's the first book of the entire Bible. And again, as we said earlier, the Bible is broken into two parts. The New Testament, which is usually more familiar to us, is at the back part of the Bible. It is about Jesus, or about those talking about what it means to be followers of Jesus. And that's really what the New Testament is. The Old Testament lays the foundation, and it does so in a lot of different ways. We're going to walk through, we're going to see a number of different types of materials as we walk through. Everything from narratives about stories of things, ancient things that happen. Some things that we're going to read that are going to be clearly poetic in nature. We'll read some things that are going to be clearly prophetic or future, or just encouragement related. There's a lot in here, but it's not necessarily, if you think of the name or the word Jesus, you won't find it in the Old Testament. So it's all about him in the New Testament, and all about getting ready for him in the Old. So in Genesis chapter 1, and this is where I was going to go with this 1.3, is you'll watch another video about how the book of Genesis begins. It begins with the creation narratives. And I use the word narratives intentionally, because as we read through chapter 1 and move into chapter 2, we'll find there are two different narratives about how things came to be. There's a lot of ways that we can begin to meld them together, or knit them together, or how they fit together. But we have to recognize that they are very different attempts at giving us some sense of perspective, who we are, whose we are, where we are in this bigger story, and what's our part in it, is where the story begins in Genesis 1. So on the Moodle 1.3, that's one of the things we'll do, is we'll watch that video, and then we'll read a little bit. In fact, it asks you to read it, and we'll do a little bit of beginning tonight to give you a little heads up. And so if you would, if you happen to have your big red Oxford Annotated Bible, I'll need a couple of volunteers to help read through the first chapter. And I think we'll just do chapter 1 tonight, and I'll leave you with chapter 2. And again, we'll talk about some of the particulars of chapter 1, but I'll leave you with chapter 2 to say, how is this different from chapter 1? And you'll see that they're quite different. And I think very clearly on purpose why they're so different. But I'd like to read chapter 1 just to get a feel for the opening stanza, how the Bible, this long story that we hold in our hands, how it begins, and why does it begin this way. So we're going to begin with what I'm going to refer to as our creation narrative, chapter 1. And let's just go ahead and read it, and then we'll just kind of ask some questions. So as we get ready to read, or as you're listening or reading along, just listen for things that get repeated. How is the story kind of put together? Is there a structure or something that we can identify as a structure to this account? And what can we glean simply from that structure? Also, as you listen, consider, what do you think? How is it that the God character in this story is being depicted? And also, what can we know about ourselves as the story is, or what is the story telling us about who we are, or what we're about as humanity? Okay, so that's where we'll start. So we'll do this. We'll look for structure. We'll look for repetition. We'll look for clues in the literary structure itself, and then we'll ask some questions just of content. How does it depict God, and how does it depict us as humanity? Okay, do I have a volunteer who could read? Oh, we're going to go through, say, about from chapter 1, verse 1 through verse 13. I'll read. I'll probably need 3 volunteers for this. So who's reading first?
I'll go ahead.
Okay, that's Aaron, I think.
I'll read first.
Where's
Okay.
it at? It's in this book?
Yes, it is. And
Yeah, page 11.
there you go, page 11, exactly right.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Right where the Bible part begins. And right where the big letter 1 is on that page.
Okay.
And read through until you get to the verse that begins with that letter 13.
Yes. Okay.
Okay.
I'll read first.
Okay.
Okay. So, in the beginning, when God created the heavens and the earth was a formless void, and darkness covered the face of the deep, while a wind from God swept over the face of the waters. Then God said, "Let there be light," and there was light. And God, and God saw that the light was good, and God separated the light from the darkness. God called the light day, and the darkness he called night. And there was evening, and there was morning the first day. And God said, "Let there be a dome in the midst of the waters, and let it separate the waters from the waters." So God made the dome, and separated the waters that were under the dome from the waters that were above the dome. And it was so. God called the dome sky, and there was evening, and there was morning the second day. And God said, "Let the waters under the sky be gathered together into one place, and let the dry land appear." And it was so. God called the dry land earth, and the waters that were gathered together he called seas. And God saw that it was good. Then God said, "Let the earth put forth vegetation, plants yielding seeds, and fruit trees of every kind on earth that bear fruit with the seed in it." And it was so. The earth brought forth vegetation, plants yielding seeds of every kind, and trees of every kind bearing fruit with the seeds in it. And God saw that it was good. And there was evening, and there was morning the third day.
Good. Thank you.
You're
Jess.
welcome.
Okay, so our next reader, if you would, take us from that verse 14 down through verse 25.
I can read.
Okay, please.
And God said, "Let there be lights in the dome of the sky to separate the day from the night, and let them be for signs and for seasons and for days and years. And let them be lights in the dome of the sky to give light upon the earth." And it was so. God made the 2 great lights, the greater light to rule the day, and the lesser light to rule the night, and the stars. God set them in the dome of the sky to give light upon the earth, to rule over the day and over the night, and to separate the light from the darkness. And God saw that it was good. And there was evening, and there was morning, the 4th day. And God said, "Let the waters bring forth swarms of living creatures, and let birds fly above the earth across the dome of the sky." So God created the great sea monsters and every living creature that moves of every kind, with which the waters swarm, and every winged bird of every kind. And God saw that it was good. God blessed them, saying, "Be fruitful, and multiply, and fill the waters and the seas, and let the birds multiply on the earth." And there was evening, and there was morning, the 5th day. And God said, "Let the earth bring forth living creatures of every kind, cattle and creeping things, and wild animals of the earth of every kind." And it was so. God made the wild animals of the earth of every kind, and the cattle of every kind, and everything that creeps upon the ground of every kind. And God saw that it was good.
Okay, we're stopping right there, and it's kind of midstream, so I'm sorry for doing that. We usually do this, we get to a evening and morning and X day, but we're going to stop here because we're transitioning in this 5th day, on this 4th day, excuse me. And so I want to get another reader, but already, okay, we haven't probably figured out too much about who we are yet, but I hope that you have begun to hear a little bit some of the pattern or structure or repetition, and we'll talk about that. So if you haven't, we'll catch up on that. But also, again, so far, don't answer the question yet, but the question again, how is God being depicted? How is God depicted in the story of creation? I think it's really kind of interesting. Okay, so someone to take us through the end of the chapter, beginning here at verse 26. And actually, we'll need to go into chapter 2, verse 3. That's how the story ends. The story doesn't end at the end of the chapter. It actually bleeds over into chapter 2 just slightly. So from 26 here into the chapter 2, verse 3. Third and final reader. Okay, please, Jason.
Yeah, I can do it. Okay. Then God said, let us make humankind in our image, according to our likeness, and let them have dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the birds of the air, and over the cattle, and over all the wild animals of the earth, and over every creeping thing that creeps upon the earth. So God created humankind in his image. In the image of God, he created them. Male and female, he created them. God blessed them, and God said to them, be fruitful and multiply, and fill the earth and subdue it, and have dominion over the fish of the sea, and of the birds of the air, and over every living thing that moves upon the earth. God said, see, I have given you every plant yielding seed that is upon the face of all the earth, and every tree with seed in its fruit. You shall have them for food. And to every beast of the earth, and to every bird of the air, and to everything that creeps on the earth, everything that has the breath of life, I have given every green plant for food. And it was so. God saw everything that he had made, and indeed it was very good. And there was evening, and there was morning, the sixth day. Thus the heavens and the earth were finished, and all of their multitude. And on the seventh day God finished the work that he had done, and he rested on the seventh day from all the work he had done. So God blessed the seventh day and hallowed it, because on it God rested from all the work that he had done in creation.
Good. Okay, thank you. Yeah, so that's our initial introduction to the Bible, and that's our first page or first chapter, first step in. And so let's just walk back through some of those questions. What did you hear? What was some of the maybe structure or repetition? What did you hear in just the reading? Just if we're looking only at just kind of the words of the meter, what's going on?
Heard a lot of light and darkness, a lot of like night and day, and that it was good. Like everything he made was good.
Yeah.
Even though it was dark and light.
Yeah. Well, and both light and dark are apparently both good, aren't they?
Yes.
Yeah. So yeah, but how many times do you think, just throw a guess out, I didn't ask you to count, how many times do you think you heard the term and it was good? Go ahead, Jessica.
Every word.
At least 5 or 6. It was almost after every time he created, every day that he created something.
Good. Okay, so there was this, it's consistent, it's all the way through, but it was repeated over and over and over again. Okay, what else did you guys hear? What other things were repeated, or how does that structure work?
Everything was fruitful and needed to multiply, and everything on earth we needed to survive, and everything was already created for everyone to survive and be fruitful.
And so everything that was needed was there. And I loved it, actually. Thank you, Aaron, for reading that section for us. And as you were reading, I don't know if you noticed it, but one of your little dogs yipped in the back as you were talking about the creatures that God created.
I know.
It's like, I want to get in on this. He's talking about my kin. Here he is. Good. Any other repetition? Anything else structurally that stands out to you?
I just heard day by day. So it was like the first day, the second day, the third day, and then the seventh day he rested, and all was good. Mm-hmm.
Good. Yeah, and it's pretty clear, isn't it? I think if you read this, even just listen for it, there's a pattern that seems to be repeated, and a lot of things get repeated, but it doesn't just keep doing circles. It is in a progression towards something. And so we can see that order or that pattern being played out. And I think that becomes part of the message as well. I think there's something going on here. I would suggest to you even that repeat is almost like you're hearing a verse of something, that it gets the repetition and then you're ready to start the next verse. Almost like you would find in a poem that has a specific repetition or a rhythm to it. And I think maybe that's part of what's going on here that sometimes we don't recognize. If we're trying to read this as a scientific how to create the world, we would get a different understanding of what's trying to be said than if we see this as a creation poem that has some really profound things to say about creation and who did the creating and what our part is in that creation. I think we can maybe take away some different answers, and I think that's what we see as we begin to look at this. Now, when we move into chapter 2, and you'll do this on your own this week, you'll read through and there'll be a little different story, and how it fits is that clearly it focuses on this sixth day. It focuses on when humanity is created. And so it becomes a little narrower focus. And we'll see that, here's where we get the story of Adam being created and Eve being created and all the other fun stuff that goes along with it. And as you read it, just smile when you think about how crazy it must have been naming all the animals or doing all the other stuff that it talks about. There's some interesting things there. But again, it's a different flavor. There's none of that rhythm. There's none of that repetition. There is, and really, quite frankly, the character of God is portrayed in a quite different way. And the role of humanity is probably a little bit more fleshed out. So let's talk about those other two questions. How is God represented, or what do you take away from this Genesis chapter 1? How would you say God is being described?
I say God is being described as a creator. He's started by using light and dark as what I got from this chapter too is, aside from light and dark, is I think he separate all the human beings or living things, and everybody has a purpose. And so, yeah, God as being the creator. Basically.
Wow, that's a profound takeaway, Shona. It's very profound. But good. Maybe you can come and preach for me some Sunday and just say this is what we get. If all we had was Genesis 1, we would know this is an important truth. So good. Jason, you were going to say the depiction of God. I
was going to say I cheated a little bit and was kind of looking at the footnotes as we read.
Sure.
And I was able to connect that to what I was reading, because I think the thing that's said almost more than anything else is God said. Yes. God said is like repeated like countless times. But what it says here in the footnotes is it was presenting God as a king, decreeing all of these events. Mm-hmm. So as he was creating, he was saying, I say this, and it happened. So like a mortal king, he's like, go forth and do this, and it happened, or whatever.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, his word carries a lot of authority, right? Because whatever he said was. And and you'll see that when you transition into chapter 2 and you read the story of Adam and Eve and the garden and the animals and all the rest, how God is depicted there is going to be quite different. Quite different. He's much more approachable. He's much more interactive. We don't see God interacting much in this. He just, boom, this is what it is, and this is what it's going to be. And I think both, we can say that both can be equally true of God, that he can be both authoritative as well as approachable. But just one telling of the story compared to the other telling of the story brings out different aspects or different perspectives on who this God character is, because really the rest of the book. Now, did you notice when you picked up this book? This is a big book. Did you notice that? Okay, so if we're starting off in this big book, and the main character is God, then these opening pages are laying a foundation for us to understand a little bit about who it is that we're going to be learning about as we transition through the book. So, but good. There's nothing wrong. Don't ever apologize for reading some of the footnotes, Jason, and getting some helps, because that's true. That's a good catch. We wouldn't have caught otherwise. Okay, humanity. What might we say just initially? Chona's already taken us down a little bit of that way, but what are some other things? Where do we see humanity in this story, and what can we take away? What is our part, maybe to take away from this bigger story of creation all around us? Go
I
ahead.
would
Okay.
say that humans basically come in all different shapes, sizes, colors. They're good, they're bad. And like Chona said, we all have a purpose, but God created us all to be fruitful in one way or another, and to, you know, come to earth and have authority over everything else. It sounded like
Mhm.
like we were put here to be in charge of the land and the waters and everything. I don't know, that I kind of took that out of it, and everything was here already provided for us, and we're supposed to use it in the proper manner.
Right. Now, going back to our previous question, everything that we have here before us, if you were to use a word for what creation around us is like, we'd probably choose a word like complete, good, adequate. Okay, but we have a role. We have a role in it, and yeah, clearly there's a role, and we'll see it again. This role comes a little more, gets fleshed out a little bit in chapter 2, but there is a role for us to be stewarding, you know, caring for, being the ones in charge of the rest of creation that was created prior to the creation of humanity here. So again, it puts a little bit of context on who we are and where we fit in the bigger plan. Anything else that you could say, this is what I saw as a key piece of who we are? If part of what this chapter 1 is to do is try to give us a roadmap, where are we on that map? Who are we as humanity?
Well, Jessica kind of beat me to it because I saw the same kind of thing. I saw that God created us in his image and that he wanted to give us dominion. So what I see is that, you know, he created us to be stewards of this world that he created.
Yeah, I think that's the obvious takeaway, but it's an important takeaway. That I think if we read this whole poem and we didn't come away with that, we would be missing the point of what the author wanted us to get. I think if the author wants us to get that God, in all of his creativity and all of his authority, has created all that's all around us, and it is good. In fact, it's very good. And yet in the midst of all this, here we are. So what's our part? And I think you nailed it. Jess and Jason, you guys both did really well with that. You know, there's something very profound when God says, let us, which is an interesting thing, isn't it? Who's he talking to? Okay, we'll come back around to that maybe someday. Let us create humanity in our image. And how significant is that for us to understand that part of us, we bear in the image of this one who's the creator. But also with that image comes the responsibility of being the one now who is in charge of caring for all that is around us. And so it does put us in a little bit of a different perspective. Those of us who often get kind of caught up in our own smaller lives realize that we are a part of a bigger story, and that's what we're being invited to, is this bigger story that God has for all of humanity, and we've got a part to play in it, and we've got a place in the story. And I think that's what Genesis 1 really is. It's not so much telling us, it is telling us what happened, but even more, it's inviting us to enter in and to find our part in it. Good. Okay, so I'll let you go ahead and continue on. Again, 1.3 in the Moodle touches on this particular passage as well as chapter 2. And again, the little bit different phrasing and a little bit different way that chapter 2 plays out, how we see God being more interactive and the story changing kind of its cadence and its pace. But then it takes us through, I think there's some really good things to begin to wrestle with. And there's a question in 1.3 about image of God. I took that out. You'll probably see it's scratched out on in your Moodle. But that's okay. It really, it's a decent question to ask. I just didn't need you to have to wrestle with it too much. What does it mean for humanity to be created in the image of God? And what does that mean for us as educators as we think about those who are educating, that they too are bearing that image of God? Also in that same section on 1.3, there is another question as part of the forum, and we'll be doing a number of forums this week where I'll have you interact with one another. Well, one of the questions invites us to look at this book, God's Healing Strategy by Ted Grimsrud. And it asks you to come up with what his thesis is. Now, being we're all here, I'm going to steal the thunder, all your thunder. If you pull out Grimsrud and you look at chapter 1, the very bottom of the page, I won't make you dig for it. Here it is. Here is Ted Grimsrud's thesis at the bottom of page 23. This is the reason why he wrote this book, is because the Bible as a whole tells a story that I will call the story of God's healing strategy. See, he's given it away. This is the name of the book, and the reason he's doing it is because he wants to reveal what this healing strategy is. That God's salvation is about, or God's bringing about of salvation, that is, the Bible tells the story of God's work to restore wholeness to the human-divine relationship, to the human-to-human relationships, and to relationships between the human beings and the rest of creation. That little paragraph here on 23 and 24 is what we'd call the thesis. This is the seed out of which that Ted Grimsrud is going to build the rest of his book. He's going to demonstrate how that unifying theme runs through the whole of the Bible. And so there'll be a point, not this week, but next, where we'll ask you to tell how this theme or how that thesis is being worked out in a specific place. And if you didn't know which thesis we were talking about, it'd be hard to answer that question. So circle that paragraph and say, when we come to the thesis, this is my answer. But again, Grimsrud's idea is that everything is going to work in the Bible in some way to reveal this healing strategy of restoring relationships, God to us, us to others, and us in the context of creation, is what the Bible as a whole is really all about. Okay, now I've got a couple of things more I want to just touch on before we go. Every week, 6 o'clock here on Tuesday nights, we will Zoom together. We will be here between an hour to 2 hours each week. I will open up weekly the Moodle for you to get started on. I'll open it up hopefully by first thing Monday morning, and you'll have from Monday through Sunday night to accomplish the tasks that each week then brings. The challenge with forums, and maybe I can have you guys help me with this, the challenge with forums is to have them due on Sunday night doesn't necessarily give anyone a chance to respond to your forum. And a lot of the forums require responses with other students. So, so while the deadline may be Sunday, any sooner on the forums is even better. And if we need to adjust that to give more room, we can. But we'll try to do that. Do them as forums as soon as you can, so it gives you another day to maybe come back and respond to the others. And otherwise, yeah, we'll meet on Tuesdays, but each week class will open on Monday. So if you want to use Monday to kind of get a jump start or look ahead so that we can ask questions, every other week we'll start with our prayer, and we'll move secondly into if there are any questions either coming from the reading or coming from the Moodle or any other questions that seem to be sparking your interests so that we can deal with those before we talk about some of the specific topics that each week we'll be engaging. I think that's about it for me. Do we have any questions from all of you tonight?
So I'm looking at those forums that we're talking about.
Yes.
Now, so because we want to do responses for each other, now is that only the 1.4 or are we talking about the 1.4 and 1.7 and?
Yeah, it's 1.4, 1.5, 6, and 7. Let me see. I believe those also have forums with
Responses.
And I might have to do some changing on that.
How long do the forums need to be?
No, not very long. The prompts are generally pretty specific and pretty pointed. They need to be enough to let me know that, for example, if you're watching videos, that you actually saw the videos, but they don't need to be too elaborate generally. Okay, so say for example, I'm on 1.6, a year of living biblically. That's a video of a fellow named A.J. Jacobs, and he wrote a book a few years ago, and this little video is about his experience that he sought to try to follow the biblical rules. But the challenge is that in the Old Testament, and this is something we'll look at a little bit this week and more next, is that there's a lot of laws in the Old Testament. And one, no one can really keep them all. And two, I'm not sure they were ever intended to be all of them kept. But as you go along, you'll get some more added here, added there. And so he kind of has some fun talking about some of the Old Testament laws, some of the things that happened that were kind of rules to govern the people of Israel, almost 4,000 years ago. And what do we do with them today is really his question underneath it all. But he does it in a way that's really entertaining and kind of fun. And so the question is that once you hear him do his talk, then the two takeaways are, what challenges did he encounter? And of course, you'll hear that clearly when you watch the video. And what are some of the things that he learned? What was his, kind of big takeaway from it all? So if I know that you watch the video because you can identify one of the challenges, or if you can identify what his big takeaway was, it'll be easy enough. You can do that in a paragraph. And so it doesn't need to be a whole lot of writing, just enough to let me know that you engaged with the material and heard what they were trying to say. Okay. And I'll look, tell you what, Jason, I'm going to look into it and see if I can maybe change some of those, because otherwise, especially this week, most of our work is in forums, and so that's going to be a little bit challenging. I'll see if I can't rework those to make those either just a post that you post your response without the necessity of having to interact. And I'll look for that, especially in that 1.6 and 1.7.
Okay, I don't think it'll be that bad, but yeah, we'll give it a shot and see how we go.
Yeah, I don't think it'd be that bad either, but I just know that, if you're pushing to get it done and you're not giving anyone else a chance to look at yours, we're limiting your other members of the cohort from having, the people to respond to.
Yeah, we're just challenged this week in particular because we're still finishing final assignments from the last class. So there's an overlap that's killing us right now.
Oh, well, good. Thank you for telling me that. And well, let me say that other than, it's going to feel like you have a lot of reading this week, but the actual assignments are not heavy or big weighty assignments. But yeah, there is a lot of reading this week. So just do the best you can. And I do recognize that. I know you guys have got a lot going on. If you've got your books, you're already ahead of the game. And when you're reading, especially reading in the book of Genesis, when you're reading some of the Bible material this week, feel free to read very fast, to skim over things, to catch the big picture of the story and not get bogged down in details, because there's too much reading. It will take you too long if you are reading really honing in to try to get every detail. Okay.
All right. Thank
Okay. Well, it's a pleasure to meet you all. And if we have any questions, please shoot them my way. And I will see you again the next Tuesday, 6 o'clock.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Thank
right.
you. Great to
Yeah.
meet you. Have a good
Nice.
evening.
Thank you very much. And same to you. Okay.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.